years, an entire discipline of modern psychology has developed called cognitive behavioral therapy. This breakthrough teaching reveals that many problems, from eating disorders, relational challenges, addictions, and even some forms of depression and anxiety, are rooted in faulty and negative patterns of thinking. Treating those problems begins with changing that thinking. I don't know about you, but when the Bible and modern psychology say the same thing, I want to know more. Time to change your mind? In 10 years, we'll each look in the mirror, and someone will stare back. That person will be shaped by the thoughts of today. The life we have is a reflection of what we think. That's a crazy thought, right? What we think will determine who we become tomorrow. And even crazier, we probably don't even realize that's happening. We don't think about the power of our thoughts, which only makes them that much more powerful. But God made us this way. What science is demonstrating today is what God told us through Solomon more than 1,500 years ago. Proverbs 23:7 in the New King James Version says this, "For as he thinks in his heart, so is he." So, if the Bible and modern science teach us that our lives are moving in the direction of our strongest thoughts, then we need to ask ourselves, do I like the direction my thoughts are taking me? If your answer is no, then maybe it's time to change your thinking. Decide to change your mind so God can change your life. If you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, of having your life poisoned by toxic thoughts, of being held hostage by those inner voices, I want to encourage you to keep listening and stay open. Whether or not you consider yourself a Christian, I promise there are truths in these pages that will work if you put in some effort to apply them. As we walk through this important topic together, I want to show you how you can change your thinking and transform your life. In part 1, we'll examine the battle for your mind and how you're really not alone in your thoughts. In part 2, you'll learn how your brain works and see how to rewire it. In part 3, you'll discover how to reframe your thinking and redesign your mind around new thoughts. And in part 4, you'll become equipped to identify your mental triggers and to overcome them through prayer and praise. Following each chapter, you'll find an exercise that will lead toward the renewal of your mind. Then, at the end of the book, we'll envision your new life. You'll see how you can live free of anxiety and negativity, while also experiencing the joy and the peace that come from knowing God and living in His truth. Now, if you're skeptical, that's okay. Believe me, I get it. We've all tried unsuccessfully to change the bad habits and force our runaway trains of thought back onto the right tracks. But this time, you're not alone. You're about to discover that God will team up with you to transform your thinking. And I'll be your guide to walk with you as you start this journey. With God's help, you can transform your mind. You can stop believing the lies that hold you back. You can end the vicious cycle of thoughts that are destructive to yourself and to others. You can allow God to renew your mind by saturating you with His unchanging truth. You can let His thoughts become your thoughts. With that opportunity, let's circle back to our opening statement. Our lives are always moving in the direction of our strongest thoughts. What we think will shape who we become. If you agree with that proposition, and remember, both the Bible and modern science say it's true, then it's time to change your thinking so God can change your life. Part 1, the replacement principle. Remove the lies, replace with truth. 2 Timothy 1:7, New King James Version. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Chapter 1. Perception is reality. My friend Kevin served on our church staff as one of our pastors for close to 20 years before retiring. Way back in the early days, our staff used to play a game called Capture the Flag in our storefront church offices. We occasionally got violent as players tried to seize the flag, but because we were ministers, of course, it was a holy violence. Eventually, however, 2 people ended up getting injured, so we had to establish some guidelines. One of those rules was no attacks before 8 a.m. I tend to get to work early, and one day I showed up around 7 a.m. and began walking around to my office, and my spidey senses went off. Something wasn't right. Suspecting a threat, I threw open a closet door to find Pastor Kevin hiding. I don't know if he'd spent the entire night in there, but his plan was to wait patiently for the surprise attack at go time. But thanks to my superhero ability to detect danger, I thwarted his plan. I was so excited that I slammed the door shut, wedged my foot against the bottom, and yelled triumphantly, "You're gonna spend the rest of the day in that closet, Kevin!" I grabbed a chair to secure my prisoner. Chuckling maniacally, I said, "I'm putting the chair under the doorknob." But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get the chair to fit. And because I couldn't move my foot from the door, there was nothing I could do to lock Kevin in the closet. Fortunately for me, I realized that he didn't know that. He believed me. So, with all the fake confidence I could muster, I sold it. "There's now a chair under the doorknob, Kevin. You can't get out." Yes, I lied, but I'm a pastor, so it was wholly lying. Well, what did Kevin do? More like, what did he not do? Kevin never tried to open the door. He just believed my lie. Kevin started shouting, "Let me out! Let me out! Please let me out! I don't want to spend my day in here. Let me out." Well, I couldn't stop laughing. Because the door was unlocked, all he had to do was turn the handle and push, and he would have been free. But he just stayed in the closet. I had a premarital counseling appointment at 8 a.m., so I went to my office to meet with the soon-to-be-married couple. About 8:20 or so, I heard something in the ceiling above me. Then I heard the noise again. It was Kevin. He had scaled the shelves in the closet and gotten up into the ceiling tiles trying to find a way out. When a ceiling tile suddenly poked out, I saw Kevin's eyes glaring down at me. I asked the couple to forgive the intrusion, then looked up and jokingly said, "If you'll wait until I'm finished with this meeting, I'll call the fire department and see if we can get you down. If not, you're spending the rest of your life in that ceiling." This couple that I was counseling faced a dilemma. Should they laugh or pray for the guy stuck above us? Out of respect for them, Kevin waited. The whole time, the closet door was unlocked. I wonder if you feel locked up or taken captive. If so, have you considered that you might be trapped in a self-made prison? You may feel held back from living the life you want, not experiencing the relationship you want with God, with little to no hope for the future. But are you? If you think you're trapped, if you believe there's a lock on the door, you've bought into a lie. And it's the lie, nothing else, that's holding you back. Yet, if you identify that lie, then you can remove it. You can replace it with the truth and be free. Your liberation is as simple as a 2-step process. Remove the lie, replace it with truth. Let me say it again. Remove the lie, replace it with truth. But the struggle in this process is very real and very hard. And it can feel like a war is being fought in your life, because that's exactly what is happening. The battle for your mind. In the 80s, We were taught that love is a battlefield. Thank you, Pat Benatar. If you're a bit younger, you learned the same lesson from Jordan Sparks. If you're even younger, you know Battlefield is a series of video games. But no, your mind is a battlefield. And the battle for your life is always won or lost in your mind. Picture a battle with two opposing sides. Now, imagine that the people on one side don't realize they're involved in a battle. The enemy is attacking and taking them out, picking them off one by one, but they're oblivious. Hard to imagine because it's just too absurd, I agree. But every day, you're engaged in a battle. Are you aware of it? You may not recognize the battle you're in while it's wreaking havoc in your life. Ever wonder why you can't shake a habit? Why you feel like you can't connect with God? Why you lose your temper so easily? Why you often make bad decisions? Why you and your spouse fight so much? Why you're consumed with worry, fear, and negativity? There's a reason why. Your mind is a war zone, and you're under attack. It's critical that you become aware of this fight. You cannot change what you do not confront. If you ignore the battle, you lose the battle. The Apostle Paul made this truth clear. He said in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12 from the New Living Translation, he said, "We're not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in heavenly places." In other words, your adversary is not your boss, spouse, child, ex, or neighbor with that demonic dog that's always barking. You may not realize it, but the one you're fighting against is your spiritual enemy, the devil. Sound too extreme? That's exactly what your enemy wants. There's an old saying that goes, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist. Satan doesn't want you to believe in him, so he works subtly. He knows that if you ignore him, he can invade your mind with impunity. He can plant seeds of doubt, confusion, worry, depression, and anxiety that will continue to grow. Satan is your unseen enemy, whose mission is to steal, kill, and destroy, John 10:10, to stop you, 1 Thessalonians 2:18, and devour you, 1 Peter 5:8. Satan despises you with more hatred than you can imagine. He wants to keep you from God and from the life that God has for you. He wants to keep you from intimate relationships with those you love the most. He wants to rob you of inner joy and abiding peace. He wants to strip you of the fulfillment you could have in knowing you're making a difference with your life. So, how does he do this? Simple. He lies. Just like I lied to Kevin about the locked door. Satan is a deceiver, and his strategy to defeat you is to persuade you to believe his lies. Jesus warned us and said there's no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies, John 8:44. I think it's interesting that the only time Satan is called a creator, a father, is here in connection to his lies. Understand this. Satan is your enemy. And every day he's prowling around, 1 Peter 5:8, watching you, looking for a place where you might believe a lie. If you succeed at something, he may convince you that you don't really need God. If you fail, he'll try to brainwash you into thinking that you'll always be a failure. You have a great first date, he'll suggest romance is the only thing that will make you happy. First date's a disaster, he'll whisper that you'll never have anyone to love you for who you are. If you do a nice thing for a difficult person, he'll murmur that you're a pretty great person yourself and you don't really need God's grace. If instead you speak harshly to someone, he'll whisper that you're an awful, hateful person whom God could never love. If you're trying to stay away from porn, he'll tell you everyone else is doing it. If you give in to porn, he'll make you feel like you're the only person sick enough to do such a disgusting thing. Satan is conniving and trying to lock you in a prison of lies. But you are not his prisoner of war, unless you choose to be. Those days can be over, but that's going to be your call. As if a lie were true. For centuries, people believed the world was flat. Some still do. Don't believe me? Google it. You'll find there are flat earthers today. Because they believed the wrong idea, it impacted their lives as if it were true. People wouldn't venture too far out in the ocean for fear they might sail off the edge. Why? Once again, a lie believed as truth will affect your life as if it were true. Growing up, a lot of us were told that going swimming right after eating wasn't safe. Our parents made us wait 30 minutes after a meal to get in the pool. The only problem is that it's not dangerous to swim after eating. That was a lie. Right now you may be thinking, no, I'm pretty sure that's true, but it isn't. Yet we believed the lie. So the lie affected our lives as if it were true. Missing some swimming isn't a big deal. But what if you believe significant lies that have serious implications? What if you buy into the lie that you'll never be good enough, or that you've made too many mistakes, or that God doesn't really care about you, or that you'll never be able to stop doing what you don't want to do? One more time, because this point is crucial. A lie believed as truth will affect your life as if it were true. There's a specific lie that I believed as long as I can remember. Living as if it were true has been one of the biggest limiting forces in my life. For years, my strongest thoughts have always been about my shortcomings. I've always felt inadequate. No matter what anyone else said, my inner voice always screamed, no matter how hard you try, you'll never measure up. Why did I feel that way? Honestly, I'm not sure. I've never not felt that way. It seems my self-doubts come naturally to me. But at the same time, I could give you a resume proving why I should feel that way. Essentially, I was living a faithless life. As I type these words about how we can control our thought life, my mind is racing. As the psalmist wrote, Psalm 42, verse 5, for example, I'm wrestling with my thoughts. I'm battling feelings of overwhelming anxiety because I've said yes to too many things and overcommitted myself again. Yes, my mind is out of control. I wish I could tell you I'm full of faith as I write this first chapter of the book, but my thoughts are full of fear. But then I come back to what I know is true. And what is true is the point of this book. I swat at the swarm of thoughts flitting around in my head and remember that I'm not a victim of my own mind. I have power over my thoughts. I am not captive to them. With God's help, I can make them captive to me. While I know those truths, at the same time, the reality is that I'm a struggling thought warrior who's battled insecurity, negativity, fear, and anxiety most of my life. Midway through college, something dramatic happened to me. Jesus changed my life. By God's grace, he found me and saved me. Soon, I was being so transformed by my relationship with Christ that while still very new in my faith, I sensed God calling me to be a pastor. And this was way before pastors wore cool shoes and had more Instagram followers than church members. As God was building my faith, I felt him telling me I could make a difference in the world through his church. All my childhood insecurities and teenage self-doubts were being eclipsed by a glimpse of hope. What do I mean? Well, here's a little backstory for context. When I was growing up, my family couldn't afford name brand clothes, so my mom bought used Izod socks at garage sales, cut the alligators out, and sewed them on my generic shirts. I felt fake. In the second grade, I discovered I was colorblind. Not only could I not match my fake Izod shirts to my no-name pants, but I would never see the beauty of this world as others could. I felt defective. In a spelling bee with my classmates, I misspelled Mississippi. We had learned a song teaching us how to spell that word. And every time an I appears, there's only one of them and two of everything else. How could I possibly misspell Mississippi? I felt stupid. In the 5th grade, a girl named Tiffany dumped me for a guy named Brian. Her reason? Brian had a motorcycle, and I only had a moped. Yes, 12-year-olds in my small town drove motorcycles and mopeds. Tiffany said I was Richie Cunningham, and she wanted the Fonz. If you're too young to remember Happy Days, then think of it like she said I was Screech, and she wanted Zach Morris. I felt lame. My father played minor league pro baseball. He was a professional athlete, and I wasn't sure if I could even play in college. I felt inadequate. These isolated events, along with many others, formed my perception of myself into the reality I would carry into my newfound faith as a young adult. I felt I wasn't good enough. So, I learned to play it safe and avoid risks at all costs. I felt that given an opportunity, I'd fail. I quietly came to define success as just not failing. Chances are good. You have your own set of lies holding you back. The lies nearly derailed my call to ministry. For now, it's a no. Only weeks after putting my faith in Jesus, I tried to teach my first Bible study to a group of young adults in a little church in Ada, Oklahoma. Afterward, the leader of the youth group said, "Well, I guess teaching Bible isn't your gift, is it?" 3 years later, I finally got up the nerve to try teaching the Bible again after being asked to preach my first sermon. After the service, I stood by the door saying goodbye to church members, and an elderly gentleman looked at me and raised an eyebrow and remarked, "Nice try." Nice try? The next lady in line asked if I had any other skills besides being a preacher, and then made a weak attempt to encourage me to keep my options open. Seriously, that really happened. I had to fight off the temptation to run and hide in the church baptistry, and yes, full immersion. Despite another setback, still believing God's call, I continued my journey toward full-time vocational ministry by going to seminary, following college, and marriage. About halfway through seminary, the day finally came when I stood before a group of spiritual leaders as a candidate for ordination in our denominational church. With the entire committee looking on, the spokesperson explained to me, "We've chosen not to ordain you. You don't have the gift mix we see in most pastors. In fact, we're not even sure you're called to be a pastor, but feel free to try again next year. But for now, it's a no." Immediately, all those childhood memories met up with my teenage memories. They all joined forces with the rejections from the church, forming an avalanche of negative thoughts that crashed over me, engulfing me. The voices roared loudly, "You aren't enough. You'll never be enough. You'll never measure up." And then the final verdict was delivered. You don't have what it takes. Driving home in my red Geo Prism, I felt dejected, embarrassed, confused, and angry. Devastated. How can I explain to my wife, Amy, that I didn't make the cut? How can I face my pastor, my friends, my classmates, the church where I serve. The tears flowed as every possible negative thought played on repeat. But then, a strange thing happened. Suddenly, a different voice interrupted the others. God spoke. He spoke to me. While not audible, the words somehow seemed louder than any physical voice I'd ever heard. In that moment, my Heavenly Father said, "You're not who others say you are. You're who I say you are. And I say you're called to ministry." Well, that was, of course, one of the most powerful moments of my life and a massive turning point. I wasn't suddenly healed of my negative thinking or delivered from believing every lie I told myself while growing up. The patterns were still there. The consequences were still ingrained. But I began to realize God had a very different way for me to think and a much healthier way for me to think of myself. I realized He was offering me a choice of whether to continue to believe the lies or accept His truth about me. That's the beauty of allowing God to master our minds. He gives us a new path, a new way to think. But we have to get on board, agree, and cooperate with Him. Lie detection. How about you? What negative messages did you take away from your childhood? What unhealthy and destructive conclusions have you come to believe about yourself and your place in the world? Satan's strategy to win the battle for your mind is getting you to believe the lies. If you believe a lie, it'll hold you back from doing what God is calling you to do. The lie will keep you living in shame from the past when God wants to set you free for a better future. The lie will keep you from living with joy and freedom and confine you to a less than existence. When legendary magician Harry Houdini came into a town to do his show, he often went to the local jail, gathering a crowd of people along the way. To get buzz going about his upcoming performance, he asked the jailer to lock him in a cell. Time after time, jail after jail, town after town, Houdini escaped within minutes. But one jailer heard that Houdini was coming, and the jailer was ready. When Houdini closed the cell door, the jailer put the key in the lock and secretly turned the key in the wrong direction. He then removed the key, and everyone watched as Houdini struggled to escape by unknowingly locking himself in repeatedly. Finally, in frustration, Houdini admitted he could not escape. The jailer then revealed his deception. Houdini had believed a lie, and the lie had held him captive. Living your life by a lie is a lot like believing the door is locked when it isn't. On the other side is freedom. But you have to commit to some personal lie detection to experience the abundant life Jesus came and died to give you. That leads us to our first exercise. Exercise 1. Your thought audit. Do you ever find yourself thinking things like, "I just can't change. Even if I try, I'll always be stuck. I can never get out of debt. No matter what I do, I'll always struggle financially. No one really loves me, and if they knew the real me, they definitely would not want to be in my life. I'm not good at relationships. Whenever we start to grow closer, I always do something that messes things up. People in my family struggle with their weight. I'll never like my body. I can't get close to God. I'm sure it's my fault. There's something about me that keeps me from experiencing God like others do. When I look at what others post on social media, I feel like my life sucks." If you think you can't do something, you probably won't. If, on the other hand, you think you can, odds are you will. The same is true with your problems. If you dwell on them, they will overwhelm you. But if you look for solutions, you'll find some. If you feel like a victim, you'll think like a victim. And the direction of your life could be one of misery. But if you believe by the power of Christ you can overcome, then with His help, you can. Consider this. Who you are today is a result of your thoughts in the past. Who you become in the future will reflect what you think about yourself today. Whether it's self-doubts or worrying or responding poorly to a bad day or a tough season in life, we all wrestle with negative thoughts that try to hijack our emotions and decisions. The goal of this exercise is to give you the opportunity to think about what you think about. Let's conduct a thought audit. Hit pause for a moment and prepare your mind. Focus on your honest answers. This could begin the process of changing your mind. There are two parts to this exercise. Part one, we're going to call inventory. As you go through a normal day, take stock of your thoughts. Write them down. Type them into the notes on your phone, or record them in your voice memo app to transcribe later. Trust me, if you really want to change, you need to invest the time to figure out what you're regularly thinking about. Be honest. Don't lie to yourself about the lies you tell yourself. Evaluate the factors consistent in your day. Are you more negative in the morning, but usually level out by the end of your workday? Or the opposite? Do you tend to bring negative thinking home with you? Or do you manage to leave it at work? Consider all the dynamics and patterns of your day. Pray and ask God to reveal anything He wants you to see and understand in how you think. Once you see your thoughts in black and white, you can begin to work on your thought life. Jesus said, "The truth sets us free, but first we must reveal the truth." Part two, audit. In the accompanying PDF, there are 20 questions to help you analyze what you regularly think. I've broken down the questions into two categories: defense, protection from the enemy, and offense, growth toward God. Write down your honest answers. When you're done, compare your defense and offense. This evaluation will help you see your thoughts and work on real change. Remember, the goal is to think about what you think about. You can use this information as we move forward to help you take practical steps in winning the battle in your mind. As we continue, we'll get some answers that deal with the truth that you've revealed in this exercise. Be encouraged. You're one step closer to changing your thinking and believing what God says about you. Chapter 2. Becoming a Thought Warrior. The professor guiding us in the advanced thoughtology course we're about to take will be the Apostle Paul. His writings will teach us the biblical way to win the battle in our minds. Incredible as it is to consider, Paul wrote some of his teachings while in prison. And yes, his door was actually locked. Yet, even though his body was behind bars, Paul's mind was still free. How? He had taken his thoughts captive long before he entered a jail cell. He knew two truths that we also need to know. Number one, the battle for your life is won or lost in your mind. Number two, your thoughts will control you, so you have to control your thoughts. Paul had not always been a thought warrior. Check out how he described himself in Romans chapter 7, verses 15 through 24. He said, "I don't understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. As it is, it's no longer I myself who do it, but it's the sin living in me. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do. This I keep on doing. Now, if I do what I do not want to do, it's no longer I who do it, but it's the sin living in me that does it. So, I find this law at work. Although I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being, I delight in God's law. But I see another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind and making me a prisoner of the law of sin at work within me. What a wretched man I am. That doesn't sound like a guy who's mastered his thoughts. While we all get what he's saying, that just sounds a little crazy. But check out how Paul described himself in Philippians 4, verse 12. He said, I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Now, that does sound like a guy who's mastered his thoughts. Paul's change encourages me because my thought life can be crazy. My mind can run out of control. I despair. I obsess. I can be confused. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed. It's like I'm in a confrontation with myself and I'm losing. Yet honestly, we can all be a bit crazy, right? You try not to worry, but you do. You tell yourself to be positive, but you aren't. Like Paul said, what I want to do, I do not do. The daily battle is so frustrating. But Paul mastered his mind. He said he had learned a secret. So that means we can too. How did he win the battle for his mind? How can we? Paul also wrote, though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, 3 through 5. Notice that Paul used we in his statement. Those in a relationship with Christ can experience this change. Let's break down his words and see how the application can transform our lives. 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare a war. Remember thumb wrestling as a kid? Well, there's a World Thumb Wrestling Championship held in the United Kingdom each year. I know, I found it hard to believe as well. Two big, jacked, tattooed guys with names like Under the Thumb and Jack the Gripper stare menacingly at each other. You know they mean business. But when they say 1, 2, 3, 4, I declare a thumb war, that's when I lose interest. Two guys battling with their thumbs in a little professional thumb wrestling ring just doesn't keep my attention. You and I, however, are actually in a war. I know, I can find it hard to believe too, because most days it just doesn't feel that way. Life just seems normal. But we are in a war. One that has less to do with our thumbs and everything to do with what's above our eyebrows. I don't know about you, but I've never glared at the devil and said with him, 1, 2, 3, 4, I declare a spiritual war. But maybe it's time. Forget the thumbs, declare war. Yet Paul said, we do not wage war as the world does. 2 Corinthians 10:3. The problem is that many Christians don't wage war at all. Satan is assaulting us with evil. He's delivering blows of deception and bombarding us with lies. But we can be oblivious to the attacks. As a result, our lives are not what we want, and we numb ourselves to reality. We long for more, but settle for less. We keep ourselves busy and distracted. We buy things, attempting to impress people and fill some mysterious inner endless void. We scroll mindlessly on social media, feeling left out, left behind, and unimportant as we compare our dull lives with everyone else's highlight reels. We do our best to pretend we're happy while a war rages around us. And as a result, we're losing battle after battle. You may recall from history class that the United States took a while to engage in World War II. We spent the first years maintaining a neutral position. We believed that because the war was over there, it wasn't impacting our lives. Eventually, it became clear that Hitler and the Axis powers would not stop, and that the freedom of the entire world was hanging in a balance. While the Japanese bombed our naval base at Pearl Harbor, that provocation was the final straw. Finally, the U.S. entered the war. On D-Day, we joined with other Allied forces as 150,000 troops stormed the beaches of Normandy. The Germans had set about 4 million landmines to protect the beach from such an invasion. They also rained down gunfire on our men. The sacrifices that day were enormous. Thousands of lives were lost. But the engagement was necessary because there was no other way to defeat evil. To win the battle for our minds, we must engage, because there is no other way for us to defeat evil. The days of being neutral must be over. A few years ago, I began to feel stuck. My thoughts were out of control. I would work on my message for church thinking, last weekend's message wasn't good enough, and this one won't be either. I just don't have what it takes. I'm not good enough. I'm not even sure I can keep this up. I don't even know why people come to this church. If I poured more energy into being a better pastor, I felt like I was failing as a husband and a dad. If I gave my best to my family, I was sure I was letting God down and failing the people in my church. Inside my mind, landmines were everywhere, and I was dodging bullets. My strongest thoughts were centered on my weakness, and I knew they were leading me to a place I did not want to go. Finally, I decided I'd had enough. I had to do something. It was time to win the battle for my mind. 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare a thought war. For about 2 years, my mind was my number one priority of prayer. I read so many books on the topic that I lost count. I also received counseling from a psychologist and confided in trusted friends and mentors. I discovered and started using tools that allowed me to practice 2 disciplines: retrain my thought patterns and reorient my trajectory. Bottom line, I knew that if I ignored this battle any longer, I'd lose it. So I changed my thinking, and that decision changed my life. Destroying the stronghold. The lies we believe and base our lives upon are strongholds. Paul said, the weapons we fight with have divine power to demolish strongholds. 2 Corinthians 10:4. So, we need to demolish those lies that harm us. The word stronghold is translated from the Greek word akuroma, which means to fortify. In ancient times, a stronghold was a building, a fortress built on top of the highest peak in the city. This citadel was surrounded by a reinforced wall up to 20 feet wide. In times of war, if the city was attacked, the stronghold was often seen as unapproachable and impenetrable. Political leaders were hidden there so they wouldn't be captured or killed. Paul compared the lies we believe to those fortresses. Like the walls of the strongholds, our lies have been reinforced over and over to become bigger and stronger. We believe them for so long, they become a part of us. We believe our walls protect us. We think they're impenetrable, and yet they often keep the truth unapproachable to us. We have mental and emotional strongholds, the lies that have a strong hold on us. I told you before about my belief that I was never enough, not good enough, smart enough, or successful enough. I thought I had to prove that I was worthy. You may have read that and thought, But Craig, you're a pastor. You know the Bible. God tells us we don't need to be enough. Jesus was enough for us. Craig, you know God loves you, and that's all that matters. If you thought that, yes, you'd be right. I did know that. I taught that. But deep down, I felt like that truth applied to everyone but me. Knowing those truths was not enough to penetrate the walls of my stronghold. My stronghold kept the truth unapproachable. I still believed the lie that I was not worthy and I had to prove myself. And that lie affected my life as if it were true. Yes, even as a pastor who taught others that very truth. Solomon gave us some very wise counsel to apply to this battle. He said in Proverbs 21, verse 22, "One who is wise can go up against the city of the mighty and pull down the stronghold in which they trust." If you're in a war and attack a city, make sure you take down the stronghold. If you don't take the more difficult action of bringing it down, the city will reestablish itself. The leaders are hiding inside the walls, still very much alive. So, you have to bring down the stronghold. Our word demolish is translated from the Greek word kathareo, which means destruction requiring massive power. The word also means to lower with violence, to bring something down with brute strength, as with a wrecking ball. Regardless of our perceived strength, you and I do not have a massive wrecking ball power. But God does, and He makes it available to us. Yet again, Paul taught us this concept in Ephesians chapter 1, verses 19 through 20 in the New Living Translation. He said, "I also pray that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us who believe in Him. This is the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead." That's incredible. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is available to you and to me. Let that sink in. You have supernatural, resurrection, roll the stone away power at your hand to change your mind, transform your thoughts, and win the war. If God's power can take Jesus from death to life, then whatever you need can be done for you. That's the kind of massive power God is offering you. Isn't that encouraging to you? You've got astonishing power to help you. Don't give up. Look up. What's your stronghold? What lie is holding you back? What mistruth keeps you from taking a step of faith? What wrong thought pattern robs you from living a life of freedom and joy? Know this: you cannot defeat what you cannot define. You have to identify the lie that has become a stronghold for you. You must realize the negative impact it's had on you and others. Do you see how you become a prisoner of deception, locked up by a lie you believe is true? If you're going to change your life, you have to change your thinking, demolish your strongholds. If you truly want to change your life, you cannot just change your behavior. Even if you change your actions for a while, the original issue will just reestablish itself. That's why Christianity has never been about behavior modification. It's all about life transformation. We've all experienced that frustration, right? We make a New Year's resolution or some commitment to start or stop doing something, lose weight, quit smoking, pray more, stop yelling at the kids. Well, for a few weeks, it seems to work. And then we go right back to doing what we always do. Why? We haven't gotten to the root of the problem, the lie we believe. Addressing the problem is attacking the city. Identifying and destroying the lie is pulling down the stronghold. Both are necessary to win the war. To do both and experience success, we need God's power. We cannot have victory without His strength and support. I have good news that may sound like bad news at first. You ready? You don't have what it takes to win the war. Neither do I. You know it because you've tried. You've tried to change your thinking, tried to change your life. You've done everything you can do, but you always find yourself back in the same place. You keep doing what you don't want to and not doing what you want to, just like Paul. You keep falling down and falling short. I get it. Been there, done that. All the trying and failing and falling can lead to a place where we feel like giving up. What's the problem? The power you need is a power you don't possess. Relying on your own power is self-help, and self-help only goes skin deep. You have a devious spiritual enemy. You have reinforced strongholds. What stands against you is formidable. Fighting in your own power is like attacking Godzilla with a fly swatter. Admitting that you need a power you don't possess is vital, even though it may be difficult. I know it is for me. If you've been taught to be an independent, self-reliant, pull yourself up by your bootstraps individual, confessing you don't have what it takes might feel like a weakness, but it's not. It takes real strength to admit I can't do this on my own. I need power greater than I possess. Once, after a blizzard, I tried to shovel a path to our cars to get enough snow off the driveway to back them out. In 2 solid back-breaking hours, I'd cleared a pathway big enough for a small squirrel to walk through. Just as my wife Amy was about to call 911 to save me from permanent frostbite damage, a neighbor from down the street drove by on his tractor. Yes, my neighbor has a tractor. Remember, I live in Oklahoma. In a matter of minutes, because of the power he possessed, my helpful neighbor had cleared out our entire driveway. We tend to fight our battles with shovel power, but we need tractor power. We need a power we don't possess. We have to ask for and receive help. Remember the popular definition of insanity? Keep doing the same thing, expecting different results? If you've tried with everything in you and it hasn't worked, stop. Don't keep doing the same thing. You'll just get the same results. If you feel like you have to admit defeat and stop trying, don't do that either, because you'll keep living the same life. Don't give up. Look up. Look up because you have a gracious, generous God who has the power you need and wants to share it with you. To bring down your strongholds, it's time to go up. As a child of God, you have access to everything that belongs to your Heavenly Father. So look up, go up, and access the power of God that you need to remove the lies and replace them with truth. Ask Him to show you the lies that you believed for too long. Tell Him you want your mind to be filled with His truth instead of the devil's falsehood, and then thank Him for hearing you. Exercise 2. Identifying the lies you believe. In the first exercise, you took an honest inventory and made an audit of how you tend to think on a regular basis. In this exercise, we're going to dive deeper and get more specific. I want to repeat a crucial section of this chapter that needs to be connected to this exercise. What lie is holding you hostage? What mistruth keeps you from taking a step of faith? What wrong thought pattern robs you of living a life of freedom and joy? Know this: you cannot defeat what you cannot define. You have to identify the lie that has become a stronghold for you. You must realize the negative impact it has on you and others. Use the questions in the accompanying PDF to trigger your thoughts. It's now time to define the lies you've been believing. Identify the strongholds in your life and face their negative impact. Freeing yourself from all distractions. Focus on identifying the specific lies you believe. I've given you plenty of examples of lies I've believed and have had to address, both old ones and new ones. Make your statements personal and straightforward, as in, I believe I'm not good enough. Get them out, write them down. Chapter 3. Old lies, new truth. If we're going to demolish our strongholds, we have to recognize the power that lies have over us. Think of it this way. There's a large, shaggy-haired, lumbering dog, let's call him Max, who will not leave the yard. A car drives by. Max loves to chase cars. The thought of grabbing one by the bumper and wrestling the beast into submission makes him drool. Max wants to give chase so badly, but he just sits in the yard. Then, two boys start playing catch in the street. The ball rolls right to the edge of Max's yard. He desperately wants to get the ball and run from the boys, but he doesn't. One of them teases the dog. What's the matter, Max? Afraid of the ball? Max wants to bite the brat, but his tormentor is just outside the yard. A cat walks down the street. Max cannot imagine the nerve of this cat. He knows that cats are evil, and they're only on this earth to do the devil's work. Max wants to attack, to bring a hailstorm of violence onto this feline's life, yet he cannot. Why? An invisible electric fence lines the perimeter of his yard. This type of fence puts out a little invisible beam, and when an unsuspecting dog crosses the line, zap! He gets a small jolt of electricity. The first time, the dog is confused. He tries to leave the yard again. Zap! Another painful little sting. If the dog is stubborn or just dumb, he might try a third time. After that, he's learned his lesson. He knows he'll never be able to leave the yard again. Max's owners have an invisible electric fence. Actually, Max's owners used to have